Asked my girl what she wanted to be. She said, baby, can't you see?
I
Wanna be famous, star on the screen, but you can do something in between. Baby, you can drive my car.
Ba, 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 ba.
Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
Ba, 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 ba.
Baby, you can drive my car. And maybe I love you.
Beep, 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 yeah!
So this is another installment of I Want to Tell You. We're in the middle act Beatles. I'm Sam.
I'm Jake. I always said I'm Chris.
Because of the
So
the
used to that.
placement.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, and I'm
geography.
sitting in his place too. I'm just so used to that being the second thing said. No, I am Jake this time, I promise.
This is your favorite period of Beatles, basically late 65
Yeah.
through like basically late 67, early 68.
Yeah, the next three albums are like impenetrable. They're bulletproof.
Yeah.
The Kevlar. But yeah, this is really the start of. I mean, look, the start of something special was "Please Please Me," but this is the start of that thing that we've all said a million times, but we say it because it's true. That studio is the instrument thing. Like that mantra is becoming truer and truer with each step.
And they're not interested in being kind of like the pop commercial boy band.
No,
group
they
anymore.
already did that. You know?
Yeah, and they're done. This is the last album they ever tour.
Yeah.
At least during its like promotional cycle.
Yeah.
This is also the last album. And maybe this indicates why there's so much difference moving forward. This is the last Lennon dominant album.
It really is, yeah, when you think about it. Which is kind of a bummer. I mean, granted, we've said it before, like this that no means that he's done, obviously. I mean, he still puts gems together.
My favorite Lennon song, my favorite Lennon song is later, after this album.
Yeah.
And it's not a Lennon-helmed album.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's Rubber Soul. It's the album after they do their big international 65 tour and, do all the promo stuff for the Help film. They play Shea Stadium in August of 65, the first band to do like really studio, like arena, to bring rock to arenas, which I guess Zeppelin kind of like the Beatles brought rock and roll to arenas, and then bands like Zeppelin and the Stones and
Queen
and the Who really perfected it.
Yeah.
Because you would say Queen is your favorite live rock band act.
I think in terms of pretty much.
Yeah. Or if you even look at going back to Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about
I think
the
we
Beatles,
could.
I swear to God.
I mean, I'll even shoe in mid 70s Kiss in there too.
Oh yeah. But you ever watch The Song Remains the Same?
Oh yeah, I got that on DVD.
Playing at Madison Square Garden.
Fantastic.
But yeah, that all really started with the Beatles playing Shea Stadium. They're playing the Budokan in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen footage of them in the Budokan?
I have. One of my favorite things, and I wish there was more of it in this world.
Really? Because they look exhausted
no.
like some shit.
Not the performance, but I wish that there was more of the moment on the anthology where it's Paul, George, and Ringo, and they're sitting around and they're talking about that performance. And yet it's very rare to see Beatles sitting around talking about a performance. And they're talking about how the microphone's swaying back and forth and trying to hit those harmonies in Paperback Writer. I love their suits, though, that they wear during the Budokan. It's classic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but yeah, they're basically in the back of their minds, even though they do tour in support of Rubber Soul, at the back of their minds, they're like, we're done with this shit.
Yeah.
They're done touring. They're done making the constant promotional appearances. They're done putting out like 20 non-album singles at a time.
Yeah. How freeing is that,
Oh yeah, that's
It's
why
insane.
they're able to do stuff like they never. It's wild. They never tour in support of Revolver. They never tour in support of Sgt. Pepper's or Magical Mystery Tour or the Yellow Submarine, which is the albums that fill out the remainder of this area. To be fair, they don't tour in support of the albums in the latter area Beatles either. So
True.
No White Album, no Abbey Road, no Let It Be. Though all of Let It Be, you could argue, is kind of a live performance, or at least that's how they try to present it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of they want to have like the birth of an album.
Yeah. So, but no, it all starts, this period of the Beatles all kind of, and it really does take inspiration from the last two albums, from Beatles for Sale and Help. You've got, which had kind of explored, especially side 2 of Help, kind of like the burgeoning folk rock movement that we see with like Bob Dylan kind of leading the charge back here in the States.
Definitely their folkiest album by far.
To the point where Capitol Records, this is the last major Beatles album that Capitol Records basically butchers. They basically combine the unused rock tracks from Help and Beatles for Sale, and they threw it together with the rockier tracks in Rubber Soul for that version of Rubber Soul, and then the folk tracks from Help and all that were combined with the folk tracks for Rubber Soul for I think Beatles 6 or something like that.
What a mess.
No, Yesterday and Today.
What a mess.
That's what it was.
What a mess.
But the first number is one of the funkiest numbers, which we kind of butchered ourselves. Drive My Car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give us a little bit of props because that just started and we just ran with it.
Just like and we did it a cappella. They have that awesome guitar riff that kicks off the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Lets you know that it's like now like kind of like groovy 60s. It's not like up until that point bands were like very clean cut and everything still like they were like in the 1950s and everything. When you start to hit Rubber Soul, I mean, and look at that album cover. That is an iconic fucking album cover.
And I always heard the story is that it was supposed to be straight on.
It was an accident.
And that the photo, the slide when they were going through the possible photos, it fell backwards and it elongated the Beatles as almost this rubber type thing. And they were like, again, it's a perfect example of that happy accident that we'll talk about pretty much for definitely the next 3 albums. And bits later on, but definitely the next 3 albums are going to be full of a lot of happy accidents. And this is the first of kind of a perfect sign. I always also heard that Rubber Soul was, I don't know if this is true, but a joking kind of dig at Mick Jagger.
Yeah, because he would call the kind of music that him and the Rolling Stones, because at this point, the Rolling Stones had been out for around for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Satisfaction comes out in 65.
Yeah.
And he calls what he's like, I take a lot of inspiration from you could call me blue-eyed soul, plastic soul.
Yeah.
And McCartney was like, as kind of a joke, because at the bottom of your shoe is a rubber sole. He's like, well, we're a rubber soul.
Yeah, classic. You can hear, I think, in the anthology, them going, plastic soul, plastic soul.
Yeah, in between takes, like, McCartney's just like, plastic soul, man, plastic soul. Because, I mean, the Beatles were hanging out with the Stones at this point. They didn't feel, Lennon didn't quite feel threatened yet by the...
and man, he could fucking... shred into the Stones later on.
He was always cool with Keith Richards.
He wanted to be Keith Richards.
He wanted to be basically like
in the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. I feel like he tolerated Mick Jagger. Like it was kind of like a package deal, like Lennon and McCartney. Yeah. Keith Richards and Mick Jagger were a package deal. So like, well, if you're gonna hang out with Keith, you gotta hang out with Mick.
That's true, yeah. And also, I don't mean this as a dig to the Stones because we've talked about how much we love the Rolling Stones.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like McCartney was never intimidated by the Rolling Stones.
No, because he wasn't. If he wanted to do dirty rock stuff, he could do stuff like Why Don't We Do It in the Road?
Yeah,
or
and he
Oh
does
Darling.
It so well.
Yeah. Whereas like
look at Helter Skelter.
Yeah, that which was a kind of him responding to the Who.
Yeah, I Could See for Miles was the track.
Yeah. So but no, so yeah, Rubber Soul, the hair is starting to get shaggier.
Yeah.
They're pretty open, or at least more open than they'd been before about smoking pot.
Yeah.
Like they kind of like there was kind of like a haze of they describe Rubber Soul as a pot album and Revolver as an acid album, and Sgt. Pepper's as kind of a combination of the two.
I always like the story, whether it's just folklore or just whatever, about McCartney was really the last one to embrace pot, and
he was never big on acid.
And I think the time, Lennon had a bad trip one time and ran up to the roof to get air. And
that was during the Sgt. Pepper sessions.
Yeah, and that's when McCartney finally joined the drug train, really, because he wanted to be in the same mindset to help calm Lennon down.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate Lennon-McCartney moment that's not writing music.
Yeah, and for Lennon, like, pot and acid was the ultimate escape from his kind of unhappy marriage.
Yeah.
Just the general, he dealt the most, I think, with insecurity out of all of them.
Oh, definitely.
And so that was his escape. And from all that, all that smoking pot, you get Rubber Soul, man.
Mm-hmm.
You can just imagine the Beatles smoking copious amounts of marijuana while listening to Bob Dylan and the Byrds, both of which heavily influenced this album. Drive My Car is very kind of like a almost Motown-esque, though.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
According to McCartney and Lennon, McCartney came to Lennon with a melody and a rough version of the lyrics. And it was like kind of like, I can buy you diamonds, like. And Lennon was like, "Why do you always talk about buying a girl diamonds? Like, you do that all the fucking time."
Yeah.
And so
enough, McCartney.
So he wrote his own lyrics using "drive my car" as a euphemism for sex, which is perfect.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Here's your diamonds.
Yeah. Here's your stick shift. Go in the high gear. But yeah, is it McCartney or is it Harrison that does the solo?
I'm not.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if it was a...
I actually got it up right here.
Oh.
Let me take a look.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a McCartney solo, because it definitely sounds like one.
Yeah. Lead guitar. Yep, McCartney solo. Oh, it also says lead guitar for Harrison.
He's probably...
Oh, but yeah, solo for McCartney.
Yeah, because it kind of sounds like the solo to Taxman, which is definitely McCartney.
Yeah, it's one of my... I think that's one of my, if not my favorite Beatles solo, one of my favorites. It's funny, you think about it, so many of the great guitar solos are old Macca, like Good Morning.
So many of the great Rolling Stones bass lines are Keith Richards.
Yeah.
Fuck Bill Wyman. Just draw the line in the
Yeah, right.
It's like, I love the Stones except for Bill Wyman.
Fuck 'em.
I did a Photoshop once of a picture of the Stones like in a line.
Yeah.
And I just Photoshopped or I drew like a red X over Bill Wyman and said, "Get the fuck out
Get the fuck out of here."
But yeah, I mean this song is just a lot of fun and cool groovy way to kick off the album. But I think it's really, in terms of where the album goes in terms of its folk influences, we really see it on the second track, which was one of my roommate in college, Stu's, favorite track on the album, which he always referred to as "badass," which isn't the first word that comes to mind when I think of this song.
No.
But the name of the song is Norwegian Wood.
I guess it's because he lights the house on fire. That's always the...
Which is the weirdest part of the song.
Yeah.
It's while on holiday in Switzerland with his wife, Lennon wrote a song basically about how he had an affair without trying to give it away to his wife when she, I suppose, inevitably heard the track that he was having an affair.
Yeah.
And it's the story of the singer, whoever the singer character is, has a one-night stand. At the time, apparently, it was really chic to have, like, cheap pine furniture from, like, Scandinavia, like Norway. And she leaves him hanging, even though she says she's going to do it in the song.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, "Hey, after we fuck, I got to go to work tomorrow morning."
Yeah, I'm going to chill in the tub.
Yeah, and so when he wakes up alone, he sets her place on fire.
Yeah.
Which is a weird way. Always thought it was a weird way to end the song.
It is. This is, now, Gran, I don't know if it's still the case, but this is my dad's favorite Beatles song.
It's a good one. It's also, I believe, the first time on a Beatles track we hear Harrison use the sitar.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because on the set of Help, obviously there's a lot of Indian actors and cultural elements in that film.
Yeah.
And, there's a sitar around the set, and he picks it up, and he's like, well, this makes an interesting noise.
Yeah.
And it became kind of this lifelong obsession he had with Eastern and particularly Indian and Hindi culture.
Yeah, it really changed the direction of the Beatles forever.
And, it's some of just the idea of, there's a lyrical maturity that you hear in this song that really hadn't existed before, and the kind of the almost telling a story like, I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. He kind of has that, there's almost like a poetic quality to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not Baby's first song anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring back that in every fucking one we do. Yeah, again, they were writing songs about, falling in love with the girl and holding hands and just everything's perfect sunshine and rainbows. And this is a song about
one night stands going sour.
Yeah, burning a house down.
Ending with arson.
Yeah, ending with arson. Yeah. So I guess in that way, badass, I guess.
Yeah. If you think setting your one night stand's house on fire is badass, then
go for it.
But we don't, here at Geek Out, we don't condone arson.
We don't.
We do not. Sitars, though.
Sitars are cool.
Sitars are sweet. But yeah, it's a good way.
Good one, yeah.
It's a good kind of come down from.
Surprisingly short, too.
It is,
It's like right on the 2-minute mark, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe a second or two over. But yeah, that's some of the bittersweetness about the Beatles stuff. Is some of it's like really short. Like we'll talk about possibly my favorite Beatles song of all time next week, but really, really short. That almost makes it perfect.
One of your favorite McCartney tracks is next. Kind of your unofficial, like, girl trilogies. Like,
Oh yeah.
You Won't See Me.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. It's I'm Looking Through You.
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah, it's getting through there. But I do love this song.
Yeah.
I do love this song as well.
This is the first McCartney, like full-on McCartney track, not split with Lennon.
Yeah. And one thing that I love, it's not necessarily on this track, but it's peppered throughout the entire album. And this album, for me, it's the thing that I'm about to talk about is something that I think about every time I hear the album as a standout for me is McCartney's A+ high harmony vocals that he does on this album. Oh, yeah. And we'll get to it, talk about more with Nowhere Man, but like he'll just fucking fly in like a bat out of hell and drop just a high harmony out of nowhere, and then you won't hear it again the rest of the song, and it just changes the whole course of the song.
Yeah,
and it's just fantastic.
I do love the call and response, kind of like the "You won't see me, you won't see me, you won't see me, you time after time you pretend." So this is kind of like the beginning of like if a lot of the tracks on Help are kind of about the joys of McCartney falling in love with Jane Asher, we start to see it start to go sour with Rubber Soul, where it's like, oh, yeah, okay, like You Won't See Me.
Oh yeah.
Time after time.
Yeah, and the Beatles are maturing, man.
Yeah. Love, it ain't all love is so grand.
Love is not necessarily in the air.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. Do you know that Phil Collins, is coming out of retirement?
I heard about that.
Yeah. Was he?
I never was like somebody that was like, fuck him.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine,
Yeah, I don't think he's not my favorite member of Genesis.
No,
but he's not my least favorite member.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him? He was the drummer on Live Aid with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and he was like, "That set was terrible, but I was with my heroes."
Yeah, there you go. That was Queen's Day anyway.
Yeah. And he was the only motherfucker that he played in London and took the Concorde so he could play in Philadelphia.
Oh, nice,
badass Phil Collins.
Good on you, Phil.
But and he's also in he's an extra in A Hard Day's Night.
Is he?
In the concert at the end of the film.
Oh, right on. That's like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are in Field of Dreams.
As extras, at Fenway Park. But the next track is...
That's some of the fun shit you'll get from this podcast.
Yeah, just everything. Everything, but it's all...
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's kind of like the show. There's kind of... I think there's always kind of like this loose focus on the show. Like, let's talk about what pop culture things we did this week. Yeah. And we'll just get on the weirdest fucking tangents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at any moment, it can be like a dissertation on why the 1980s are the best era of comic books of all time. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Or let's talk about the death of Captain Marvel or the Justice Society.
I have to
Jim Steranko slapped.
I have to commend you on the speaking of tangents, real quick. The Reminiscent Evil is the best podcast title of all time. The best title for a single episode of a podcast is the Just Us Society. That was fucking... I swear to God, I was in the car and I was flipping through and I saw that and I was just like, fuck yeah. The Just Us Society.
Because it was the first episode in a month and a half.
Yeah, that was so perfect.
So it's just us.
The Just Us Society. It's like that scene in Rudy when the guy's clapping the fucking...
Or it's like in 500 Days of Summer when Joseph Gordon-Levitt quits his job and his best buddy tries to do the slow clap and nobody else joins him and he stops.
Yeah, man.
Oh, man.
That guy's married to what's her face from
Christina Hendricks
from Mad Men.
Well done. Well done.
So I'll clap on that.
Yeah. You can slow clap all you want.
Yeah.
But would you call the next track the most iconic John Lennon number on the album? Nowhere Man?
Yes. I'd probably say it's my favorite of his on the album.
Yeah.
And this is like I was saying,
one of the few singles on the album.
If a couple minutes ago you're like, Jake, what are you talking about with the high harmonies of McCartney? Listen to the end of this song, when he's like, his friend, what's the fucking
meeting all his nowhere friends for
is it meeting all his nowhere friends for nobody? Yeah, when McCartney just comes in, and like that he doesn't do it any other point in the song. And it just is like the perfect slams the fucking song shut.
Nowhere Man, please listen.
Also, how sad is it in fucking Yellow Submarine
when
with
Jeremy's
Jeremy
just crying?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nowhere Man.
Yeah.
But then he dances awesomely on top of like the cake,
Yeah.
At the end of It's All Too Much, which is
Yeah.
like one of the best songs ever. I love that song. Anyway,
Nowhere Man is kind of in the tradition of, if we're talking Baby's first song, of I'm a Loser, or
Mhm.
what's another one? I don't want to spoil the party. It's
Yeah.
very much kind of like a self or Help,
but like
a Lennon self critique.
this is one of those songs that like only Lennon could write. Yeah. McCartney would never write a song like this.
McCartney, again, he isn't dealing with insecurity like Lennon is, but by that opposite token, because of that lack of insecurity, that means he would never poke holes in his own ego.
Yeah, it is weird because a lot of times Lennon writes, me, I kind of thing, and McCartney will create characters. So it's interesting to see Lennon, really create a character. He's not saying he's clearly, I think, talking about himself as Nowhere Man.
Yeah.
But he's not
going
saying
nowhere.
Yeah, he's not talking about like, me. So he's creating this character, which I think is one of the strong suits of the McCartney kind of deal. Although, of course he definitely writes as himself as well at certain songs as well.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the centerpiece of side one. It's really it's just one of the greats. Again, you've got him, and I feel like we haven't mentioned Harrison enough, but him and Harrison are doing great. McCartney and Harrison are doing great backup vocal work the entire time. So yeah, Nowhere Man gets the seal of approval.
Jake and Sam seal of approval.
Yeah.
Good on you, Beatles.
Now the next one is the first George Harrison pen number. Think for yourself.
Oh yeah. Think for yourself, 'cause
I won't be there for you.
Dun 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 dun.
And you've got McCartney using a fuzz box on his bass, which is like really prevalent in the 60s.
Yeah, seriously.
Though I feel like this is what kicks it off, because again, everyone's either bluesy or folk, and this is kind of the start of like the kind of like groovy.
Yeah,
this predates like 60s Batman.
Oh yeah.
So
that's right. Yeah, the next year he'll drop, right?
Yeah, and if we'll get to Taxman. I always thought Taxman sounded like the theme to Batman.
Oh yeah, I feel like
predates that.
Yeah. That's true.
But the fuzz bass is what makes. I mean, it's always cool to see Harrison take center stage because he doesn't do it a lot. It's almost like there's the novelty for better. I'm sorry, George. The novelty is still there.
The good thing is, with each episode, he only gets stronger. And there'll be that point where where we get there, where we'll be like, and here's a song that like Lennon and McCartney could never have written, and fucking Harrison did.
It's all right, but we'll get that in a later episode. Son, here we come.
Yeah.
But no, think for yourself. When somebody asked him, he's like, who are you telling to think for yourself, and what were you telling them to think for yourself against? He's like, probably the government. Like that was just kind of like where his mind was at.
Yeah.
I mean, he writes a tax protest song on the next album.
Yeah, but he's just like, we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
All of our money's going to taxes.
Oh, there's a progressive tax in the UK? Shit.
Yeah.
But no, think for yourself. I mean, again, as cool as it is that Harrison takes center stage, I think for me the big appeal of the song was always McCartney on the fuzz bass.
I agree.
It was a really nice touch. The next track is, I honestly, I think it's the first misstep on the album.
Okay.
Lennon was fascinated with. He was a big TV fan.
Mm-hmm.
He would, if he wasn't sleeping or having sex, he would be smoking pot and watching TV.
Yeah,
by his own admission, and he was fascinated how like commercials tended to just be the simplest, most succinct message. And he's like, well, what if we centered a song around a single chord, like a D chord, and what if we just had the message be just love? And so he writes The Word, which is just kind of a very simple, like, the word is love.
I'm actually going to go on and say that I really dig this song. Okay. I think it only took us how many albums, but
okay, Mr. Zombie. Okay.
the
Denzel Washington.
The verse. The chorus is fine, the word love.
Yeah.
Very kind of 60s, ooh, yeah. But
you imagine this song playing like in a club that he's doing the Bat-Toozy too.
But the great thing is, the verse is this fucking driving.
Oh, and with the descending.
Yeah, and like
descending guitar.
And the bass and everything. Yeah, I love the verse is what gets me for this song.
Yeah.
I think the verse is what saves it. The chorus is like said, that's fine, whatever. But
it's almost shrill.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but for me, the verse really I wouldn't say saves the song, but really turns it into something better than just that chorus.
So when it strays away from Lennon's mission statement with the song.
Yeah, the song's better.
Yeah. He'll obviously revisit the idea that love is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like
famously, yeah.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me anyway, that's it's kind of like, if I'm listening to the album, and this is an album I used to listen to, like, this is a good daytime, like, summertime driving album.
I used to listen to this when I drive home from Roanoke.
Yeah.
So, like, not the whole 3 hours, but this is probably the first and last album I would listen to on the way home from Roanoke, which is about,
whenever I had
3.5 hours.
Whenever I had to visit, like, friends out in, like, Winchester or kind of, like, down in the Harrisonburg area, like, down 66 and then down 81, I would always listen to Rubber Soul.
Yeah, me too. That's a 66, 81 album.
Yeah, just a great daytime driving album during the summer. But yeah, so the next track, which closes out side one, is actually, it's the first Beatles song to win a Grammy. And it's it's probably my favorite Paul number on the album.
Okay.
It's Michelle.
Yeah.
So obviously we're kind of starting to see a beat scene, kind of like the, I guess, what predates the hipster.
Okay, yeah.
You get those, like, kind of stereotypical art students with the striped shirt and the beret.
Oh, yeah.
And they would show up at parties and, like...
First guy who, like, did that, looked in the mirror and was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to set a fucking trend.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know what?
You did.
That random guy? Yes, fine, you did.
Yeah.
And yeah, McCartney remembered, like, at some party, like, some guy showed up like that and tried to play, like, a French song on the guitar, like Les Marseillaise or something. And so he kind of made his own kind of, like, jokey number, like, making fun of him. And, like, when the band was at parties, he would play, Michel m'appelle sont les mots qui vont très bien ensemble. And when they were in the Rubber Soul sessions in autumn of 65 to get an album out in time for Christmas of 65, Lennon took McCartney aside and was like, that French song you used to play at parties? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, it was actually a pretty good song.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it's a very kind of, even though it's a song written by an English rock band, it's a song that you listen to and it brings you to, like, kind of like this black and white classic 1940s
It is, yeah. I mean,
Paris.
he gets, the mission statement is there and it succeeds. My favorite part of the song is that they put the word tit in it. Like, so there's, like, the background vocals of going tit 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 tit, because they wanted to, I'm just looking at how it, like, the fucking did on the but yeah, they wanted to also prove that nobody really listens to the lyrics, so they just had them literally just harmonize the word tit in the background during the song. So listen to it again. The Beatles are harmonizing the word tit.
Do you like the do you kind of like the slower, moody?
I do. I think it's a really good track, and I think it's also, McCartney just going against the grain. Even though, like you were saying, there is, like, that pre-hipster thing. What rock band in their right mind would do that?
A French kind of nouveau riche song.
Yeah, on a folk album.
Yeah, I mean, though, unlike Yesterday, this is with the full band support.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good song. I think it's a really good song. I like it a lot. You said this is your favorite. That's your favorite McCartney track on the album.
On this album, certainly, yeah.
That's fair.
I like the the I Love You bridge. The I Love You, and then just like, which kind of foreshadows, like, silly love songs almost. Because how many times does he say love in that song?
Oh, you think people would have had enough of silly love songs?
I love you.
That's a fucking great song.
Which was a song written in response to Lennon. Like, knocking him, like, I don't just write silly love songs. And then McCartney was like,
does it and fucking tops the charts with it.
Yeah, McCartney's, I mean, straight up in the lyric in the song is, what's wrong with silly love songs? I'd like to know.
What's wrong with that? That's how the song ends, too.
Yeah.
He just goes, what's wrong with that?
Number one on the charts.
My favorite story about that, that I've said on Geek Out probably before, is when Springsteen got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the same year that Paul McCartney got inducted as a solo artist to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So my head exploded that year. And I remember I actually watched it. It was like on VH1. Like, I actually watched the whole thing. And McCartney was backstage, and Bruce Springsteen kind of pulled him aside and was like, you remember that song, Silly Little Love Songs? And McCartney's like, yes. or something along those lines.
I kind of played that out of my mind in the late 70s.
And he goes, I used to hate that song. And McCartney's like, okay. And Springsteen's like, I thought it was so stupid. He's like, then I had a family. And he's like, that's the most perfect song. He's like, I love that song so much now. Yeah. And McCartney's probably going, yeah, all right, cool, man. Yeah, all right, yeah. Picture, all right, cool, yeah. Just fucking disappears. I remember Springsteen gave this heartfelt, I think U2 inducted Springsteen, gave this heartfelt, like 15, 20-minute speech. Like his speech was like a Springsteen concert. Just fucking endless, and it kicks ass, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
One of my favorite moments, like on the show, I forget what the reference. Oh, you're talking about seeing the ghost of George Washington in Mount Vernon, and you mentioned the word. Was it his ghost? And I just like shout in the mic, "Ghost of Tom Joad," and Chris and Josh look at each other like, "What the fuck?" Like,
dude, the Ghost of Tom Joad, like. The original one off of The Ghost of Tom Joad is cool, but listen to the live version and then listen to the version he does with Tom Morello. It's fucking astounding. But so Springsteen does a really long, wonderful, heartfelt speech about the E Street Band, how much it means to him. And he's like, people ask me how much I love this band. I married one of the band members, for Christ's sake, you know. And then McCartney walks up and gives. I think McCartney was drunk or stoned, and his daughter had the shirt that said "About fucking time." And he gave like a 2-second thing, kind of like, you know, got up there and got off.
Like when he got the Academy Award for
Thank you.
Yep, that's it.
He ran up there too with Linda, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Should all be that simple.
The tied with Gary Cooper for the shortest Oscar acceptance speech.
Yeah.
Gary Cooper, similarly, when he won the Academy Award, 2 words. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all it should. There you go. That's all it should be.
That's all. Yeah. That I do like how they have the ticker tape now.
Yeah.
So like there, you don't feel left out.
That one guy at the bottom was like
the Beatles.
With the Beatles, yeah. And then the one guy was like announced to his kids that they can get a dog.
Oh yeah. Now we can get a dog.
That was a sweet moment. Yeah, but one guy, I think the Beatles were like, oh shit.
Yeah. Chivo, the guy that did cinematography on The Revenant.
If you're interested, it's still on YouTube. 2 Idiots Watch the Oscars.
Yeah.
It's 5.5 hours of us eating pizza and watching the Oscars.
If you really want to, man. Still relevant? Was it ever relevant?
No. Was it ever Revenant?
No. Didn't win Best Picture. But the so side 2 kicks off with Ringo Starr's first credited songwriting debut.
Get it, Ringo.
Though he only gets a partial songwriting credit because he was like, I only wrote the chorus and that's about it. And then McCartney wrote the rest. Like he was to his credit, he was always very clear about that. He's like, this is my, because you always kind of get like almost like an argument between. They're not in the same room, but whenever you get separate journalists asking them, there's always conflicting stories like, I wrote this much, or I wrote this much, or I wrote this much between Paul and John.
Yeah.
But with like Ringo, he was very clearly like, yeah, I wrote the chorus.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's hilarious.
The song is What Goes On. What goes on in your Mart?
Yeah, in your Mart.
What goes on in your mind?
What goes on in your mind?
You are tearing me apart with your words, they're so unkind. What goes on in your mind? Yeah. It's a very kind of like country western.
I always end up mashing this with Act Naturally. So you have like the what goes on in your mind. And he's just like,
all I gotta do is act naturally.
There you go.
What's the song off of, and just to fuck me over even more, I always throw it in Don't Pass Me By off the White Album. Don't pass me by, don't make me cry. Yeah.
That's the Paul is Dead clue in there when he's just like, you were in a car crash and you lost your hair. Yeah. That's my favorite Ringo song of all time.
Is it?
Yeah. I love Octopus Garden, but Don't Pass Me By is like this weird, like punk rock song. Yeah. And like the song starts with a drum opening because he's like, I'm the fucking drummer, fuck you.
It's also like almost like out of tune. Like
it's like what's jangly.
Your footsteps. Yes.
Yeah. When we do the White Album, we should just sing that whole fucking song.
Okay. Deal. If you had to sing a single entire song off this album, which we might close out this episode with, what would it be?
I'm Looking Through You.
Okay. Well, that's appropriate. Well, no, it's not the next track. The next track is Girl. Everybody really likes Girl. I don't really like Girl.
It's fine. The thing I remember most of it, and Chris is going to hate this for the microphone thing, but their percussive thing that they wanted to do was the Lennon going, like that was his way of like, that's an instrument. And it's like, okay.
whenever I hear that, it's remember that clip, the Family Guy that makes fun of Charlie, where he's grabbing his knee and he's like,
yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah.
I think of Lennon in the studio in the sound booth holding his knee like McCartney ran up with a fucking hammer and just going.
Also, now I'm totally remembering this is the song with Tit in it.
Oh yeah.
I
I just kind of let you have that with Michelle.
Yeah,
I was thinking.
This is the song with Tit in it. So past Jake is wrong. This is the song with Tit in it, which makes sense for a Lennon track.
Yeah, there is no backing vocals to Michelle, is there?
Yeah, just Tit.
Michelle.
Tit. She's the kind of girl that. Yeah. Girl.
I like the verses, and it's almost like Lennon's answer to Michelle. It kind of has that. Very I
always thought of that
French quality to it.
I always thought that was kind of I got that feel.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a okay song, but I'm
it's
not
fine.
the biggest fan.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's kind of a club.
I know it most for Breathing Deeply.
Yeah, it's another one I tend to skip if I'm listening to the album from top to bottom. Next one's your favorite.
Oh yeah, it what Sam was talking about was my weird little trilogy of like McCartney inadvertently writing a trilogy of like a relationship, and then the prelude is a Lennon track, If I Fell. But the idea is, if we're doing the preludes, If I Fell is about kind of this crush and falling in love with this girl.
If I fell in love with you, would you promise to be true and help me understand?
'Cause I've been in love before, and I found out love was more
than just holding hands.
Anyway, so you got that going for it. And then the next track, like the official start of the trilogy, would be I've Just Seen a Face, which is kind of the McCartney going, again, like the idea of like seeing this girl and being wowed by this girl and falling in love, blown away. And then this would be the next part of the song where there's a bit of doubt and jealousy in there.
I'm looking through you. Yeah. Where did you go?
And it's things aren't quite what they seem.
I thought I knew you. What did I know? You don't seem different, but you have changed. Yeah, it's definitely kind of like things aren't quite as sterling as he thought they was.
Also, I think Ringo plays the organ.
He only hits a couple notes.
The percussive
which makes sense because it's maybe not the most in tune.
Yeah,
but I mean that's the goal, but still,
you get some raspy McCartney vocal in this one too, which I love.
You've also got
really rides into the chorus,
and you've got Ringo providing percussion with a matchbook, just flicking a matchbook.
Yeah, simple things like that.
Yeah, so innovative that so simply
and cheap.
Yeah, there you go.
Book of matches.
The idea of holding a book of matches and just flicking it, against.
You take out the Martian Manhunter and play percussion on "I'm Looking Through You."
Yeah, you're not the same. Yeah, it's a why tell me why did you not treat me right? Yeah, it's a.
Yeah, I feel like it's not like outside of like Beatles fans, it's not a really well known track, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I think it's for me probably my favorite track on old Revolver.
Yeah,
not Revolver. I'm sorry, Rubber Soul.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's on. No, I was thinking of my favorite track of all time, which is on Revolver. That'll be a tease.
Yeah,
and that closes out the trilogy too.
The next track is my sister's favorite track on the album, one of her favorite Beatles songs of all time. It's kind of Lennon's precursor to Strawberry Fields. It's In My Life.
Oh, fuck. This is the best. This is the fucking top of the most of the poppermost on this album. Yeah. And this is a key moment to discuss this because this is the first podcast we've done since the passing of Sir George Martin.
That's right. The producer of every single Beatles album except for Let It Be, which is like their worst Beatles album. But
yeah, this album.
He produced this.
Yeah, so I'm Looking Through You is like definitely my favorite. And then again, favorite McCartney track. But In My Life is one of those songs. I think Lennon was even a bit surprised at like the melody. I feel like he was really proud of the melody for this one.
Very kind of simple, like do do.
But this is on. This is one of the all-time Beatles songs, and
places I remember. Yeah,
and you get the sped up or kind of baroque piano solo by Sir George Martin on this.
Yeah, the idea was, as we mentioned on the show before, George Martin, was really the first producer to break it out because the producer was really a thankless role in the recording industry at that time. Nobody knew who the fuck a producer was, just that you could produce a record, fine. You were often an uncredited musician. You'd have to basically mix the albums yourself at that point. It was the idea of multi-track editing is new. It's less than a decade old at this point.
Yeah.
The idea of an overdub, something we take for granted. So Martin really kind of changed the game there, and now that they have a little more time in the studio, it's still pretty tight production time. They get much more room with Revolver and even more room with Sgt. Pepper's, and we'll get to that. But with this album, Lennon turns to George Martin. He's like, I want something that sounds Baroque, like something, because if it's Baroque, don't fix it. I make that pun every time, and it's always terrible. Get out of here. I had a French professor that made that once. Anyway, so it's not even it's not even a shitty pun I made up.
Yeah, right?
Gotta give credit where it's due.
You got to.
Professor Spaulding.
That's where my Latin teacher was, Spaulding. Chris knows.
Oh,
Chris knows.
But she
was a nice lady.
No, I take your word for it. But the idea was Martin played his played a piano at what, half speed?
Yeah.
He recorded it at half speed.
Yeah.
And so when he brought the tape to regular speed, it sounded like a harpsichord.
Mm-hmm.
And which is just kind of a cool little studio trick.
Yeah. And it's one of my favorite George Martin moments, one of my favorite Beatles moments. And like we were talking about, it's bittersweet now because this is a song, obviously about looking back at your life and the loss of friends and loved ones and how time moves on, and
references the loss of Stuart Sutcliffe.
Yeah, and we like we said, the Beatles family is getting smaller every year, but it doesn't take away from what they did, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like Sam wanted to do this podcast, and we talk about the Beatles all the time, and the great thing is you can always go back and listen to the song. So that was definitely a track that I listened to the day he passed, just because of the great little moment on there that he has, and because of the lyrical content itself. Mm-hmm. And the end is perfect. The falsetto.
Yeah, I can't even try. Yeah. I love you more. Yeah, and again, it kicks off the kind of more nostalgic Lennon that we'll see much more in a couple albums down the line.
Yeah.
Though I guess it's not on the album itself, is it? Strawberry Fields.
No.
Martin, while we're on the topic, said that his greatest regret working with the Beatles was, I shouldn't have taken Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane off of Sgt. Pepper.
Mm.
He was just like, would have been the centerpiece of the album.
Who knows what that would have been like.
I'm trying to think where you would throw that in. Like if you were sequencing the album. Got a couple
that'll be a good
thing
to think about.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I like, a McCartney moment with George Martin, even though it's not necessarily a Beatles story. George Martin, worked with Paul McCartney on some stuff in a solo career, Tug of War being one of them, which I think is probably one of the best things McCartney's ever done, Beatles included. And I know some people are like, fuck you, but I think it's a fantastic album. But George Martin,
Life's a Piece.
Yeah, I like that song. But George Martin always said, I think the best vocal performance he ever heard from Paul McCartney was the song Wonderlust. So check that out. It's fantastic.
We do get a no, there's no segue in there. The next track is another Lennon track, but it was a holdover from the Help sessions. They recorded it during the Help sessions. You can hear it on the anthology, but it didn't quite fit in that album, and they just needed the extra song for Rubber Soul, and so they put on the song Wait. It's fine.
Fine.
It's not memorable.
No.
It's not bad.
No.
It's just not.
There's no bad tracks on this one. Or would you say the last track?
Yeah, last track.
Okay, fair enough. I feel like that was the holdout. The last track's weird.
Yeah, last track is
listen to the lyrics of the last track.
Kind of fucked. Yeah, that's a bit of a clunker, but no, Wait's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Been a long time. Oh my, please don't be late. Yeah. Oh my.
I like the build.
Yeah.
Build's cool.
Chorus is fine. Yeah, it's kind of almost like an explosion, slow verses and a Yeah, kind of a poppy chorus. But yeah, you can definitely tell it was kind of has carries the kind of influence, or at least the sound that they had in the previous album.
Yeah, and like I said, I feel like it's a bit of what we were talking about with the song "The Word," where that build up is really cool as the verse for "The Word" is, but the chorus is a little off. So it's again fine.
Next track is my favorite Harrison track on the album. It's "If I Needed Someone."
That's a good one.
Yeah. Harrison said that he kind of like more or less lifted it from a riff by the Byrds to the point where after they recorded "If I Needed Someone," he sent a copy of it to the Byrds, and he was like, "This one was basically by you guys," and they were like, "Cool." Like they gave him a thumbs up.
Cool.
Like, you're a more successful band.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, if I needed someone, if you look at the Budokan performance, you see Harrison perform that song, and he looks ragged like some shit.
Yeah.
Like
he gotta be tired.
He looks so tired.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Harrison, he's not as good a vocalist as McCartney or Lennon. And even on the album, they mix the backing vocals. That's like probably the only song on the entire album where the backing vocals are mixed louder than the lead vocals, because they can carry the tune better.
Yeah. Again, you get some classic high harmony McCartney on this one.
Yeah. So I mean, I love that guitar riff. That like
yeah,
yeah.
He's just getting stronger and stronger.
He's getting better. He's learning. Oh my God.
He's going the distance.
He's going for speed. all alone in his time of need.
Dun 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 dun.
Fun story. Maybe not a fun story.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun story, so fuck you.
we're gonna talk about why the 80s is the best era for comic books. Just go for an hour on that.
This isn't catching up.
Yeah.
We'll talk about all that shit maybe next week if we can't fill up an entire runtime
we'll
with
have
Daredevil.
Hopefully Daredevil finished by then.
Yeah. I'm still on 3 episodes deep.
What's 7?
Yeah. Oh, tits.
How many, Chris?
Tits.
Jesus.
Is it good? It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Seven,
I enjoy what I've seen
7.
so far.
I watched 7 before I came over here, and I was like, "The fuck out of here!" So good.
Daredevil, get out of here.
Get out of here, you.
But I saw Cake live at DC 101's Chili Cook-Off one year.
I was like, "Wait, what are we talking?" Okay. Yeah.
And the lead singer lost his voice.
Oh.
Can you imagine what Cake sounds like when the lead singer can't even say the fucking words?
Yeah.
The music just repeats itself. It's not the most complex music. He was sitting there and he was just like, "I'm sorry, guys." And I was just like, God. Because I enjoy Cake. I like Short Skirt, Long Jacket, all that, The Distance. Let Me Go, she said. Yeah, it's one of the first guitar songs I ever learned. Anyway.
Nice.
The last song on the album, Run For Your Life.
You better run for your life if you can, little girl. Hide your head in the sand, little girl. It's your little man. That's the end. Little girl, boom, 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 boom.
It's a song
It's a weird fucking song.
It's a song where Lennon's basically jealous of his girlfriend, and he's like, "I'm gonna hunt you down and kill you." Like he's literally telling the object of his affections to run for her life.
Yeah.
It's the worst song on the album.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst Lennon written songs. They're like, "I'm a Loser" is Baby's first song. This is like Assholes. Third or fourth song.
Assholes, third or fourth song.
Yeah, it's kind of and he kind of apologizes for it during his solo career with the song "Jealous Guy," which is kind of an apologia about all his more misogynistic, or he adds the bridge in "Getting Better" about being cruel to his woman and beating her and taking her away from the things that she loves.
Yep. So
Lennon, I think, as much as I enjoy Lennon, is without a doubt like the biggest asshole in the Beatles.
Yeah. I think there's also, he wanted to, like we were saying with the Stones and stuff, like he wanted to, he wanted
to be more abrasive.
Yeah, he wanted to create this image, and he can get real nasty.
Yeah, and I think
you just get nasty.
Yeah, I think he didn't really. He really resented having to wear like basically a uniform and have the same haircut as they used to walk around like in leather and stuff, like the fucking like Rebel Without a Cause before they were signed. And when they were signed, one of the caveats was, well, you all have to dress alike and you all have to have the same haircut. he was like, fine.
Yeah.
And I think, that when he sees the Stones, who
tried it, and then
they wore their outfits for like one live show, and then according to Keith Richards, they just threw it in the fucking garbage. And he saw that, and he's like, why didn't we just do that? But would they have been successful? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You know, but
they were so big, who knows? But yeah, I mean, again, the exact things that needed to happen for both those bands happened, and they did their thing.
Hindsight being 2020, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a clunky way to finish out a really good album.
Really good album, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a down. It's another one that I maybe stop listening to the album. Just like Chris stops watching Back to the Future Part 3 after the fucking DeLorean gets smashed. I kind of stopped listening to Rubber Soul after If I Needed Someone. I just there's no 14th track on this song, but I've already skipped like 2 other songs, so it's like there's no 12th track on this album, you know. But no, it is a really good album though.
Absolutely.
And it really does. I mean, this is kind of like the last vestiges of like folk Beatles, because we're about to get into psychedelic Beatles.
Ooh boy.
Like this is, like I said at the beginning of the episode, this is the Rubber Soul is the Beatles on pot, and where we're going next, the Beatles are about to drop some fucking acid. So, yeah, this has been another installment of I Want to Tell You. I'm Sam.
I'm Jake.
Keep listening.
Keep on trucking.